Well, first of all, I'm very gratified that everybody is here. The blurb was kind of short. It said anti-racist, anti-imperialist organizing. Maybe it said in communities of color. And to get this number of people who just sort of got it and said, this is where I want to be, is a good reflection about where the movement is. And this is going to be an effort to move the movement forward. I've been organizing with the Congress of Racial Equality, Students for Democratic Society, worked with the Black Panther Party, was in SDS, was in Weatherman, went to prison for political issues, worked 10 years on an automobile assembly line, and then worked 20 years as director of the Strategy Center. And I've had a lot of thoughts, but they've mainly been in the verbal tradition. I've never written them down, and I'm a writer. So I've written books, but I've never written about organizing. And so this is an effort to really start codifying some very basic things that we might agree on and that we could all use, that we could all say we agree with perhaps these 7 components. We could go back, and we're going to ask you to get a lot of books and to bring them back to your group. And it's really fast read, and it could be a really good read for your whole organization to ask yourselves, where are you? I'm part of a writing collective. I work with my wife, Leanne Mann.
Woo! So I'm going to ask each speaker to stand because people are having a hard time projecting,
Okay.
or so the back can hear you.
And Daniel Kim.
Daniel.
So that's, oh yeah, one other thing. I wanted to thank Jaron Brown and Ai-jen Poo for being my sort of national support committee. And that slogan is finish the damn book already. So, okay, the first thing about there's a short introduction about the history of transformative organizing from the indigenous peoples to the present. The tradition we're part of and need to advance versus the Alinsky pragmatic type of organizing. So it is a challenge to say that if you look at the Iroquois nations, if you look at the IWW, if you look at the Communist Party, if you look at the Back to Africa movement, if you look at the Niagara movement, if you look at SNCC, CORE, SDS, Black Panthers, Red Guards, Third World Women's Alliance, there's a tradition of an anti-racist, anti-patrimony, anti-imperialist politics. And those kind of politics have sort of been pushed down in this period in history. A lot of people are saying don't use the word imperialism, it turns other people off, but George Bush says it's imperialism and we're winning. You know, so they like the term, but we're not supposed to use the term. So the first thing is it's trying to reassert a historical trend that we're in, that we're part of those groups. And that's the first point of the book. The second is that transformative organizing begins by a challenge to the US empire. We live in a country that is running 2 declared wars at the same time, Iraq and Afghanistan, that is causing misery for basically people all over the world, except in Venezuela, Cuba, and other places where they've been successfully able to resist imperialism. When they talk about getting rid of poverty and people who have only $2 a day, that's based on the United States imperialism imposing its free market economy on the world so that people can't even have water in their own countries. So when I got involved in the movement, it was for civil rights and against the war. And very quickly, civil rights started calling itself Black liberation. And the against the war was Vietnamese liberation. So we were part of an anti-racist, anti-imperialist united front, and we all became radicalized. And I think that's what we want to do today, is bring this into low-income communities of color, because we believe that these advanced ideas are not imposing our agenda on somebody. It means that we're somebody, that we have views, we're part of the community is divided, we'll bring those ideas in, and the community will decide if they want them. They're free agents, but it makes no sense to go in and say, I have no agenda, when you do have an agenda. So we get back to that. Because because I always wonder, how come the people who always say they have no agenda always end up not dealing with LGBTQ issues? They never deal with the war. They never deal with racism. They're very close to the Democratic Party. They fight for very little reforms. They're very close to the AFL-CIO bureaucracy, the Catholic Church hierarchy. So they have an agenda. They should just say, that's my agenda. And we're very close to trade unions who are in struggle. We're interested in liberation theologists. We're interested in, of course, rank and file priests and ministers and rabbis. It's not like we don't deal with the church. But we have priests who don't tell us to not talk about abortion rights, as an example. So the first thing is that Transformative is about anti-imperialist politics. The second thing, which I was getting to, is a transformative organizer is a revolutionary educator. There's nothing to be ashamed of that you have something to teach. It's always been counterposed that you have something to learn. Of course you have something to learn. You probably have more to learn than what you have to teach. But you don't go in with nothing. Otherwise, why are you there? You don't knock on somebody's door and say, hi, I'm here to learn. Learn what? I don't want to join your group. What the hell is your group trying to do? I want to listen to the community. Well, all right, I want to go beat up my wife and I'll be back in a couple of... We don't want to listen to that person. We want to listen to the battered woman. We want to listen to the immigrant who's leading a struggle in our own community. We want to listen to somebody who came from El Salvador and was already in the communist socialist movement. We want to listen to the veterans of the Black Panther Party who do exist today. We want to find some of the young queer people who are also behind that door who can say, I've been looking for you. As we say, you're the people we've been looking for. So it's a much more bold politics. Third, transformative organizing focus on society's most oppressed and exploited classes. It's a strategic alliance. We believe eventually that the vast majority of people in the United States can be won to an anti-racist, anti-imperialist politics. But that's going to be very, very hard, and you have to start somewhere. We start with the intersection of the Black and Latino community as a strategic alliance that's central to building a broader multiracial left. And within that, the role of the Black and Latino working class, including defining the working class as women in the home, bus riders, prisoners, people on AFDC, yes, factory workers, people at the point of production. But there are many ways to organize the working class besides just as workers, because they're working class every minute of their day. So we have a bus riders union. We have community rights trying to get kids out of the pre-prison system. Those people are just as working class as a factory worker. We then believe that all the people of color, indigenous, Asia Pacific Island, to create this bloc. Then we think anti-racist whites are very important and should not be written off. There's a whole history of them. There's a history of students being very important to this strategy. There's a history of middle-class people of color in particular, and middle-class professionals. But if we don't have a base in the Black and Latino community, we can't branch out. You've got to have a strategy, and that's at least my strategy. Transformative organizers produced by transformative organizations. I think all the people here are in transformative organizations. You can't just join a grassroots group that doesn't have a lot of politics and think you're going to transform the community. All the groups that I've mentioned have had a very developed political agenda. So what makes them transformative organizations? First of all, their social composition. We don't believe that majority white organizations can be transformative organizations at this point in history. They can be helpful to transformative organizations, but we think it's got to be multiracial or all of one race, led by oppressed nationality people. But it's also people that have a tradition. A transformative organization has a tradition of building leadership, creating a sense of family, creating a sense of as Esperanza Martinez was saying to me, there's a lot of ways to sustain yourself, but the work must nurture you. You cannot just go to retreats, which I do, for meditation. I go to yoga, I go to the gym. I go to psychiatrists. Just like Ron Artest. But none of them can save me from loving my own work or not loving my own work. And I think it's a true joy to be an organizer and work with the people. Transformative organizing is demonstrated in the heat of battle. I remember being at the Washington, the demonstration against the war, and they put about 60 of us in a police car, stacked on top of each other, and left us in the Washington, D.C. heat. We all panicked. We thought we couldn't breathe. And imagine we started having like a riot inside the police car because we couldn't move inside this van. Finally, we organized ourselves just how to breathe, how not to panic, that there was enough oxygen, but we had to almost divide up the oxygen in the room in a strategic manner and be sisters and brothers. And when we finally got out 4 hours later, we had bonded through an amazing experience. But you need to know that one of the things about transformative organizing, Tom Goldtooth, I was talking to him yesterday, he said, remember, organizing in the indigenous community is not for the faint of heart. You get beat up. They are armed. And we have to protect ourselves. I think in this country right now, left organizing is not going to be for the faint of heart, as they're now making even speech in support of so-called terrorist organizations illegal. You know, we are all in grave danger of being locked up. And many of our people are being locked up. So it's a tough transition that if you join, you just can't have anti-imperialist politics from an academic perch. It means getting involved in the working class, and if we have a solid base in the working class of color, we can win those politics. 6, transformative organizing transforms the organizer. There's a lot of things to talk about, but for me the biggest issue is the role of self-criticism. Organizing is a mirror to yourself. You go out and speak to 50 people, 30 will shine you on, but 20 will give you some very interesting information if you want it, including voting with their feet. Oh yeah, I'm gonna come, yeah, great, yeah, sounds great, yeah, count me in. They don't show up. Well, what did that say? As I always say, the best way to say no on a bus is yes, right? So but they don't show up. Then people tell you criticisms of your organizations, criticism of your own behavior. It's very hard to look in the mirror, but between dealing with the police, dealing with your own weaknesses, and trying to transform yourself, you become a transformative organizer. And finally, transformative organizing requires a transformative program. I'm just going to read yourself quick. You know, when you're involved in a movement, they always say, well, what do you people want? When you're not, you know, when you go to the police station or you go to the university. So here are some things we want that we think are systematic with transformative organizing. Free the U.S. 2 million prisoners. U.S. out of Afghanistan and Iraq now, bring the troops home. We want the social welfare state, not the police state. We want 100,000 more buses, new hospitals, mental health clinics and public schools, and 100,000 less police. Free, safe, and legal abortion with public support and financing, and minors having the right to abortion without parental consent. Reparations for the transatlantic slave trade to the peoples of Africa, the African diaspora, and black people in the U.S. Unconditional amnesty and option of citizenship for 12 million immigrants, open the U.S. borders. Full democratic rights and equality for LGBTQ people. Shut down the 810 U.S. bases of military occupation. Stop the traffic of women and girls, which is very related to those 810 bases of occupation. Reverse global warming. Stop offshore drilling. Restrict the oil. Adopt the Bolivian proposal for the Kyoto Treaty that will reduce greenhouse gases to 50% below 1990 levels by 2017. That's Evo Morales, not Barack Obama. Self-determination and sovereignty for the Palestinian people. Jobs or income now for the 32 million unemployed. Remove all CIA operatives from Venezuela and other third world countries. And stop the embargo on Cuba. And finally, end the war on drugs, the war on crime, the war on gangs, and the war on terror. What we're going to talk about today is, do you feel comfortable taking that platform out to the people that you're trying to organize? At the Strategy Center, we do. We talk to our members like I talked to you today. So I'm really honored to be on the platform, and I'm really looking forward to the response. The first thing I wanted to talk to you about, seriously, is using the book as an organizing mechanism. As organizers, one of the things that's very important is doing things for each other. Like when every time I heard Cesar Chavez, it was very obvious that I had to write a check. I mean, or I had to join or I had to boycott the store. I mean, he wasn't here to just talk. He wanted to do something. And every time I go to a meeting, what's the first thing a very developed person does at a political meeting? What's the first question they ask? What can I do to help? Right? Not what do you think of Albania versus, but what can I do to help? So I want to just explain something. We have 1,200 copies of the book, which we brought for 11,000 people. But this was the place where we thought we were going to really sell a lot, because this is the central place we're discussing it. You know what it's like. We printed them. I think they're really nice. They're professionally printed. And we're selling them for $3 because we just want to get them out. I mean, we're trying to. So it would mean a lot if you considered buying 3 or 4. Consider getting some and bringing them back to everybody. We also want your mailing list, because the Strategy Center mailing list, which we put out our radio show, Voices from the Front Lines, which Tammy and I do. And a lot of people are starting to stream live on the web at, we're 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. That would be the greatest 2 things we could get, is your name and an email and an aggressive buy for the book, okay? So please consider that as you're going out. We have a lot of them. Now, boy, the questions, I want to start with methods, because I agree with what you're saying. I think we have to get very concrete, just like in organizing, about what works in that field. That is to say, there are many trainers, teachers, exercises, but let me just give you a few examples. At the Strategy Center, most of our people are transit dependent. So a very simple thing is we always have food for every meeting, because people are hungry and people love it. People don't miss a lot of meetings, Then people are transit dependent. In Barbalat Holland, we'll often keep people at 10, 11 o'clock at night, and then all the people with cars drive the people home no matter where they are, because the buses don't run at 11 o'clock at night. The third thing we do is the training of women leadership. The organization, I don't know, we should count it, but 65, 70% women, maybe more. But the most important thing, they're almost all oppressed nationality people. And I know, Nether, that one of the things you would talk about more is the question of internalized depression. And as a white person who's been in the movement listening, one of the things that we try to do, because there's a lot of things you try to figure out, what could you do? So one of the things we do is give women authority very early. Train them as leaders. When they come in, the understanding is you're being trained from the minute you get in to be a leader. So, but you also work under somebody who knows more than you, which is what Patrice was saying. You work under an experienced person. But by your 3rd day on the bus, we're going to set you free. You're going to go back to the back of the bus, and while the other person's working in the front of the bus, and you're going to then sum it up. And what you'll say is, I felt bad because I was queer. and I got some very bad reactions. I was hit on. 7 men thought they were very interested, and then I realized they weren't interested. I got nervous. I wasn't able to speak, or I was preachifying, and I was so nervous that I was giving an oration. And what we say is, look, relax. Each one of these can be solved. We do a lot of attention. I teach an organizer's exchange, and it has a deeply psychiatric, cultural nature, because we don't just discuss how to do it. We discuss how did you feel about what you were doing. And it gets pretty deep about how you feel about what you're doing, because you got to go out there to a fairly hostile audience. That means it's bringing up to you a lot of things. And because we're asking you to bring left things, the audience gets more hostile, and some days feel terrible. And then there are the days where the Red Sea opens, and you just believe, I found some really amazing people. And that makes it all worthwhile, because it's a great job. So I think it's great that grassroots leadership and the Strategy Center and Power and grassroots global justice, we should continue this conversation about what would be the mechanisms that would be best, what can we learn from you, what are the better ones you think we should be doing. And just an example, we do and don't do enough of Augusto Boal's Cop in the Head stuff, where we opened up our every time we have a retreat, we do at least one Augusto Boal Cop in the Head workshop where you are touching each other and you are doing crazy stuff and you are, the script is just going wherever the place it goes. So I think it's a great conversation among amazing people. And then the last thing I'd say, because I know Steve, you raised important questions, and Cindy, is that I think that the purpose of this book, the purpose of Steve's article on socialism, that Aijen's article, the Netha's 101, is 201 printed yet?
It's both of them are not.
The role of written work is critical, because the work doesn't change. You have the time to read it, think about it, mark it, and then go back and talk to people. We need to develop a culture of literacy. We have to remember that the slaves were killed if they were found to be literate. So the system does not want working people to read, and we want to develop a culture of literacy.